You think you know how to take care of your car. But what if everything you have been told is only half the story? Most drivers never learn the things mechanics actually do behind the scenes. The secret shortcuts, hidden adjustments, and little-known techniques that can instantly improve fuel economy, power, and longevity. In this video, I am revealing 20 illegal car tricks mechanics use but never teach drivers. And once you know them, you will never look at your car the same again. 1. Clearing hidden fuel trim memory after repairs. Here is something almost no driver is told. When a mechanic replaces a sensor, cleans an intake, or fixes a vacuum leak, the car often keeps running poorly afterward. Not because the repair failed, but because the engine computer is still remembering the old problem. Modern engine control units constantly adapt. They learn bad habits. If your engine ran lean or rich for months, those fuel trims stay stored. Mechanics know this, so they quietly reset adaptive memory after repairs. Without it, the engine control unit keeps dumping extra fuel or pulling timing, killing miles per gallon and throttle response. Most shops will not explain this because resetting trims makes the repair look more dramatic, like magic. But you can do it yourself with a simple scan tool or specific key on procedures. Ignore this step, and your car never truly recovers. Letting the engine relearn idle the right way. Idle relearn is one of those silent procedures mechanics perform without mentioning, and skipping it can cause rough idle, stalling, or hesitation for months. After battery disconnects, throttle body cleaning, or engine control unit resets, the engine no longer knows how much air it needs to idle smoothly. Mechanics know to let the car idle undisturbed for several minutes under specific conditions. No throttle, no air conditioning at first, then turn the air conditioning on, then drive gently. Most drivers do not. They start the car and immediately drive off, confusing the engine control unit while it is still blind. The result is jerky takeoffs, unstable revolutions per minute, and poor fuel economy. Shops rarely explain this because it sounds too simple to charge for. But doing it correctly can make an engine feel brand new without replacing a single part. 3. Fixing miles per gallon loss by resetting transmission learning. When drivers complain about poor fuel economy, mechanics often look past the engine and go straight to the transmission, quietly. Automatic transmissions learn how you drive. Aggressive driving, towing, city traffic, or even a weak battery can corrupt that learning. The transmission starts shifting late, holding gears longer, and wasting fuel. Mechanics know how to reset transmission adaptives so it relearns clean shift timing. But they almost never explain it to customers because it undermines expensive transmission services. Without a reset, new fluid or repairs do not help much. The transmission keeps behaving like the problem still exists. A simple relearn procedure, sometimes just a scan tool command or a controlled driving cycle, can restore smooth shifts and miles per gallon instantly. This trick alone has saved drivers thousands without touching the transmission. Most mechanics know that a surprising number of drivability issues aren't mechanical at all. They are software confusion. But instead of telling drivers this, they often let the car's computers stay confused because it leads to billable diagnostics. Disconnecting the negative battery terminal for 10 to 15 minutes forces every control module to forget bad learned data. Fuel trims reset. Shift logic clears. Idle relearns from scratch. This single reset can fix rough idling, jerky shifts, false warning lights, and sluggish throttle response. Shops quietly do this after repairs, then charge customers for calibration or adaptation. The truth is, in many cases, nothing was broken. The car just needed its memory wiped. Mechanics won't teach this. Once you know it, half of their mystery problems disappear before you ever step into a shop. 5. The throttle body cleaning trick that replaces a tune-up. Modern cars do not get traditional tune-ups anymore, but mechanics still sell them. What they often do instead is clean one critical component, the throttle body. Carbon buildup around the throttle plate restricts airflow, confuses idle control, and causes hesitation that feels like engine failure. Many shops charge hundreds for diagnostics before quietly cleaning it. The truth is, this illegal trick is simple. Remove the intake hose, use a throttle body safe cleaner, and gently wipe the bore and the plate. That's it. No parts replaced, no reprogramming, just restored airflow. The engine suddenly idles smoothly, responds instantly, and feels fixed. Mechanics know this works, but they rarely teach drivers because a $10 cleaner does not justify a $300 invoice. 6. The free scan tool test that exposes fake repairs. Before replacing a single part, experienced mechanics look at live data, not just error codes. Fuel trims, coolant temperature, intake air readings, oxygen sensor activity. This tells them whether the engine is actually sick or just being misinformed. Here is the part drivers are not taught. Cheap OBD2 scanners can show the same data. When mechanics see normal fuel trims and stable sensor readings, they know replacing parts would be pointless, but they may still recommend them anyway. This illegal trick is knowing how to spot lies in diagnostics. A sensor can throw a code and still work perfectly. A system can look broken while behaving normally. Mechanics protect themselves with data. Drivers are rarely shown how to read it, because once you can, scare tactics stop working instantly. 7. Clearing adaptation memory after repairs. Modern cars don't just run on parts, they run on learned behavior. Your engine, transmission, and throttle constantly adapt to how worn components behave. Here is the problem. When a part is replaced, the car often keeps compensating for the old problem. Mechanics know this, but many skip the reset because it takes extra time and does not show on an invoice. For example, replace a dirty mass airflow sensor without clearing fuel trims, and the engine control unit may continue dumping extra fuel as if the old sensor is still failing. Similarly, transmissions can keep shifting harshly after fluid changes. Clearing adaptation memory forces the computer to relearn from clean, healthy data. Done correctly, this restores miles per gallon, throttle response, and shift quality. Skipping it leaves performance on the table and quietly burns fuel every mile. Using engine load instead of revolutions per minute to diagnose miles per gallon loss. Most drivers and many shops chase revolutions per minute when diagnosing fuel economy. That is a mistake. Professional mechanics look at engine load. Load tells you how hard the engine is working relative to its design. A car cruising at 2,000 revolutions per minute with high engine load is wasting fuel even if it sounds fine. Causes include dragging brakes, underinflated tires, carbon buildup, lazy oxygen sensors, or transmission lockup issues. Load data exposes inefficiencies that a tachometer hides. That is why mechanics plug in a scanner and look at calculated load percentage, not just the tachometer. High load at steady speeds means something is forcing the engine to work harder than necessary, and the engine control unit compensates with more fuel. Drivers never feel it, they just watch miles per gallon disappear. Shops rarely explain this because it points to subtle fixes, not big parts. 9. Letting the ECU relearn after battery or sensor work, the 50-mile rule. Here is an unspoken rule in professional diagnostics. After any reset, replacement, or battery disconnect, judgment waits. Engines need time to relearn. Mechanics know that the first 30 to 50 miles after a reset do not reflect reality. During that window, fuel trims, idle control, and shift logic are rebuilding from scratch. drive aggressively too soon, and the ECU relearns bad habits instantly. That is why pros drive gently after repairs with steady throttle, varied speeds, and no hard acceleration. It teaches the computer efficiency instead of panic. Most drivers leave a shop, floor it, and unknowingly train their car to burn more fuel forever. No warning lights, no errors, just worse miles per gallon. This is not superstition. It is how adaptive control systems are designed. Ignore it, and the car learns the wrong lesson permanently. 10. Cycling the ignition to prime the fuel system before starting. This is one of those tricks that sounds insignificant, but it quietly prevents wear, misfires, and long-term fuel system damage. Many mechanics, especially on older or high-mileage vehicles, turn the key to the on position for 2 to 3 seconds before cranking the engine. They do this to let the fuel pump fully pressurize the system before the engine turns over. When you crank immediately, the engine can start while fuel pressure is still building, causing a lean start. That lean moment leads to rough, cold starts, injector stress, and extra wear on piston rings. Repeating this over thousands of starts adds up. Cycling the key once or twice allows the pump to prime, stabilizes injector spray instantly, and reduces cold start fuel wash. It costs nothing, takes seconds, and dramatically improves startup consistency. Yet most drivers are never taught this. Resetting adaptive learning after replacing parts. Here is a secret that explains why cars sometimes run worse after repairs. Modern vehicles constantly learn how to run based on sensor feedback. When a mechanic replaces parts like mass airflow sensors, throttle bodies, oxygen sensors, or even spark plugs, the engine computer often keeps using old learned data that no longer applies. Professional technicians quietly reset adaptive learning using a scan tool or specific reset procedures, so the ECU can relearn with accurate inputs. Drivers who skip this step experience rough idle, poor miles per gallon, or sluggish response, and then assume the new part was faulty. It was not the part. The computer was confused. This reset clears fuel trims, throttle adaptation, and shift logic so the engine recalibrates correctly. Shops rarely explain this because it adds no billable time and exposes how much performance is software-based. But skipping it can silently waste fuel and shorten component life. Most drivers worry about warming up their engine. Almost nobody thinks about cooling it down properly. Mechanics do. After highway driving, towing, or aggressive acceleration, professionals often let the engine idle for 30 to 60 seconds before shutting it off. This is critical for oil circulation, especially in turbocharged engines. Shutting down immediately traps superheated oil in bearings and turbo housings, where it coaks into hard carbon deposits. Over time, those deposits restrict oil flow and destroy turbo bearings. Even naturally aspirated engines benefit because oil temperatures stabilize and hot spots dissipate evenly. Mechanics do this instinctively, especially after test drives. Drivers do not, and that is why turbo failures seem random. This simple habit costs $0 and adds years to turbochargers, camshafts, and timing components. It is not illegal, but it is definitely never taught. Clearing permanent codes without replacing anything. Most drivers are told that once a fault code becomes permanent, the part must be replaced. That is only half true. Permanent codes exist to prevent people from clearing emissions faults and immediately passing inspections. Mechanics know something most drivers do not. Permanent codes clear themselves when the ECU sees enough correct behavior over time. The trick is knowing how to force that behavior. After fixing the cause, sometimes when the issue is something as simple as a loose connector, weak battery voltage, or a dirty sensor, do not erase the code. Instead, drive specific cycles, cold start, warm idle, steady cruise, deceleration, and restart. The ECU runs self-tests called readiness monitors. When enough monitors pass, the permanent code disappears on its own. Shops rarely explain this because it does not bill hours. Drivers panic, replace parts, and spend hundreds when the car only needed correct conditions and patience. 14. Using load to diagnose engines instead of parts swapping. Here is a trick mechanics rely on constantly. Problems do not show up at idle. They show up under load. A car can idle perfectly in a driveway and still waste fuel, misfire lightly, or knock under real driving conditions. Instead of guessing, mechanics recreate load safely. Slight uphill driving, steady mid-RPM cruising, controlled acceleration reveal weak coils, lazy oxygen sensors, restricted exhausts, and fuel delivery issues instantly. A bad injector may never misfire at idle, but fail under pressure. A clogged catalytic converter might only choke power at highway speeds. Drivers who only rev engines in park miss everything. This is why test drives matter more than scan tools alone. The illegal part is many shops skip this step and sell parts instead. Knowing how load exposes truth saves thousands and prevents endless part swapping. 15. Resetting adaptive memory after repairs, not before. This is one of the most expensive mistakes drivers never realize they are making. When a mass airflow sensor, a throttle body, a battery, or a transmission component is replaced, the engine control unit still remembers the old problem. Fuel trims, shift pressure, idle control, everything is adapted around a fault that no longer exists. Mechanics always reset adaptive memory after repairs, not before. If you do not, the engine keeps compensating for something that is gone. That is why cars sometimes run worse after maintenance. Hard shifts after fluid changes, rough idle after throttle cleaning, poor miles per gallon after new sensors. The fix is not another part. It is clearing learned data and forcing a relearn under correct conditions. Battery disconnects, fuse pulls, or scanner resets, when done after the repair, restore baseline logic. Skip this, and your car quietly keeps fighting ghosts you already fixed. Number 16. The battery relearn reset after replacement. Most drivers think replacing a battery is purely mechanical. Swap it in, tighten the terminals, and drive away. Mechanics know that is wrong. Modern cars store years of adaptive data tied to battery voltage, idle control, transmission behavior, and throttle response. When you install a new battery without resetting this data, the engine control unit continues using compensation values learned from a weak, dying battery. The result can be rough idle, strange shifting, warning lights, or poor fuel economy that mysteriously appears days later. Mechanics quietly perform a battery relearn reset. First, disconnect the negative terminal. Next, drain residual power by pressing the brake pedal, then wait 15 to 30 minutes, and finally follow a controlled idle and drive cycle. This clears corrupted voltage history and forces the car to relearn correctly. Dealers often charge hundreds of dollars to diagnose it. The fix costs nothing. 17. Clearing false codes after fixing the cause. Here's a trick shops use to avoid unnecessary comebacks. When a real issue triggers a code, like a loose gas cap, a dirty sensor, or a temporary lean condition, the mechanic fixes the cause but doesn't immediately trust the ECU. They clear the code manually and reset readiness monitors so the system relearns from zero. Drivers who don't do this keep driving with stored fault logic. The ECU may continue running rich, limiting power, or adjusting timing to protect against a problem that no longer exists. This is why some cars feel worse after repairs. Mechanics always clear codes after repairs and then force a relearn drive cycle. Skipping this step leaves the engine stuck in defensive mode, quietly wasting fuel and performance without triggering new warnings. 18. The soft reset before replacing any sensor. Before replacing expensive sensors, experienced mechanics perform a soft reset to confirm the part is truly bad. That means clearing adaptive fuel trims, resetting throttle memory, and letting the engine control unit, or ECU, relearn fresh data. Many sensors do not fail instantly, they drift over time. A reset can temporarily restore proper readings, proving whether the sensor is actually dying or just buried under bad data. If performance improves after the reset, the sensor is suspect. If nothing changes, the problem lies elsewhere. Shops use this quietly to avoid misdiagnosis. Drivers skip it and replace parts blindly. That is how an $80 problem turns into an $800 repair. A reset first saves time, money, and unnecessary parts swapping, yet it is almost never mentioned to customers. 19. Using shadow diagnostics instead of fault codes. Here is something most drivers never see. When mechanics really want the truth, they do not rely on trouble codes at all. They look at what I call shadow diagnostics. That means fuel trims, misfire counters, sensor switching speed, and long-term adaptations that never trigger a warning light. A car can be bleeding fuel, losing power, or wearing internally while showing zero codes. Mechanics watch how values behave, not whether a light turns on. A lazy oxygen sensor, a drifting coolant sensor, or a biased mass airflow sensor can destroy miles per gallon for years without a single alert. Shops rarely explain this because it requires interpretation, not parts replacement. But this is how pros catch problems early, before they become expensive failures. If you only chase codes, you are always late. 20. Fixing the cause, not the symptom, and resetting after. The final illegal trick is the one that saves the most money, and it is almost never taught. After fixing any airflow, fuel, or ignition issue, mechanics reset learned data so the computer forgets bad habits. Vacuum leak fixed? Reset. Dirty throttle cleaned? Reset. Weak sensor replaced? Reset. If you do not, the engine control unit keeps compensating for a problem that no longer exists. That is why cars sometimes feel worse after repairs. Repair shops often skip this step because it takes time and does not add to the bill. But without it, fuel trims stay skewed, shifts feel odd, and miles per gallon never fully recovers. This is not optional, it is essential. Fixing hardware without resetting software leaves performance on the table. If this list surprised you, comment the number 20 below so I know you made it to the end. And if you want more mechanic-level tricks that quietly save thousands, subscribe. The next video exposes a single habit that destroys engines long before the check engine light ever comes on.